Either you give me that $100,000 to pay off your debts, or your wife will regret it, my brother-in-law roared, confident in his power. I nodded silently and left. He was waiting for money, but I brought him a trap that turned his self-confidence into eternal fear. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I was reviewing old blueprints when Jennifer walked through my front door. She had a key, used it without knocking, which told me something was wrong before I even looked up. The portfolio sheets from my Phoenix Medical Center project slipped from my hands as I watched her drop her purse by the entrance. Mascara smudged, hands shaking. She collapsed onto the leather couch. "Dad?" I didn't know who else to call. I set the blueprints aside, moved to sit beside her. My coffee had gone cold an hour ago, still sitting on the side table. February afternoon. Light slanted through the blinds, dust particles suspended in the air between us. What happened? "It's Brian," her voice cracked. "He's in trouble. Real trouble." I placed one hand on her shoulder briefly, then stood and walked to the window. The neighbor's oleander hedge needed trimming. I focused on that instead of the tightness spreading through my chest. "Tell me everything." She did. Fragmented confession. Underground poker games. Promises that it was under control. Bookmakers with reputations for breaking more than promises. The number came out hesitantly, like she could soften it by whispering, $87,000, Dad. My hand tightened around the coffee mug I'd picked up without thinking. The ceramic warmed against my palm. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. "Jennifer, do you remember what I said 5 years ago? Before the wedding?" "Dad, please don't." "I'm not saying I told you so. I'm asking if you remember." She looked at the floor. "You said he wasn't ready." "That we weren't ready." "And now?" Silence answered better than words. She cried into her hands while I stared at that oleander hedge. 5 years ago I'd warned her. Young architect with expensive tastes. Inherited money he'd already burned through. Job offers that never materialized. She'd told me I was being controlling, that I didn't understand love. Maybe I didn't, but I understood patterns. Brian said he can fix this if he just gets the money. He promised. Promises. The cheapest currency in circulation. "Go home. Rest. I'll handle this." She hugged me before leaving, quick, desperate squeeze, then gathered her purse and walked out. The door closed at 4:03 p.m. I watched from the window as her car disappeared down the street. Then I returned to my coffee, blueprints, and the silence that filled the house like water. 3 hours later, the door opened again. No knock. Brian walked in like he owned the place. 7 o'clock. Winter darkness pressing against the windows. He wore a pressed shirt, expensive watch, catching lamplight. Sat in the armchair across from me without invitation. Arms spread across the back, like a king claiming his throne. "Let's skip the small talk. I need $100,000. I studied his face. Confident smile, steady eye contact. Not a tremor anywhere. Either he was a better actor than I'd given him credit for, or he genuinely believed this would be easy. That's a significant amount. 5 days, Ronald. He leaned forward. The watch glinted again, probably cost $3,000 he didn't have. "Either you give me this money or your daughter will regret it. You know what kind of reputation these people have." The threat hung in the air between us. Not physical, he was too smart for that. Psychological. Carefully calibrated pressure through Jennifer's safety. Through my fear. I let the silence stretch. 15 seconds. Long enough that his smile faltered slightly at the edges. Then I nodded once. 5 days. I'll need time to gather that amount. He stood, adjusted his jacket. "Smart choice, old man. I'll be back Friday evening." The door clicked shut behind him. I didn't move for a full minute, just sat there listening to his car start outside. Engine rumble. Tires on asphalt. Silence returning. Then I walked to my office. The safe was behind a framed architectural drawing of my first major project. Phoenix Community Library, 1987. I moved the frame aside, entered the combination I'd memorized 30 years ago. Inside, property deeds, investment documents, legal papers from 3.5 decades of building other people's dreams. I pulled out the folder labeled Phoenix Development Projects 2024-2025. Spreadsheets, market analyses, zone change proposals. All the research I'd done last year when I was considering one final investment before full retirement. I decided against it then. Too risky, too much work. Better to enjoy my savings. But risk is relative to stakes. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Kevin Foster's contact, my former business partner. He'd stayed in the game when I'd retired, still consulting on commercial developments across Phoenix. He answered on the second ring. "Kevin, it's Ronald Parker." "Ronald, haven't heard from you in months. How are you?" "I need your advice on something. Real estate matter. Can we meet tomorrow morning?" Brief pause. Kevin knew better than to ask questions when I used that tone. "Of course. 7:30 at the usual spot?" "Perfect. See you then." I hung up and looked at the documents spread across my desk. Brian thought he was playing me. Thought he could walk into my home, threaten my daughter, and I'd simply hand over money like a frightened old man. He had no idea I'd spent 35 years solving problems more complex than him. This was just another blueprint, and I always finished what I started. Dawn broke over the Sonoran Desert as I drove east through Phoenix. Sparse traffic, winter light turning saguaros into dark silhouettes against pink sky. I'd barely slept, but my hands were steady on the wheel. Brian's smirk kept replaying in my mind, not with fear, but with clarity. The cactus bloom sat where it always had, weathered stucco and neon sign barely visible in the early light. Kevin's truck was already in the lot. He'd ordered coffee by the time I slid into the corner booth. Steam rising from 2 cups, morning heat not yet strong enough to overpower the diner's air conditioning. "You sounded different on the phone last night. What's going on?" "I need information about the current market, specifically undeveloped land." Kevin poured cream into his coffee, careful spiral pattern. "You thinking about coming out of retirement, building something?" "Something like that. What's available on the east side?" "East side? Nothing worth touching." He paused, set down the creamer. "Unless there's one parcel. 3.2 acres. Family's unloading it for $45,000. "Why so cheap?" "Wrong side of Highway 60. No utilities. Been sitting 2 years." I watched his face. Kevin had always been terrible at hiding when he knew something valuable. "But," he grinned, "but city council's voting next month on commercial rezoning. That parcel will be adjacent to the new complex. Give it 12 months, Ronald. It'll triple, maybe more." My finger tapped the table once. "Old habit," Kevin noticed. "You're certain about the rezoning?" I reviewed the development maps myself. It's happening. He pulled out his phone, opened a real estate app, slid it across the table. Barren desert land, highway visible in the distance, nothing but creosote bush and dust. To most people, worthless. To someone who understood timing, opportunity. I memorized the listing number. "Just exploring options," I said. Kevin studied me over his coffee cup. 30 years of partnership meant he could read my tells, but he also knew when not to push. We finished breakfast talking about his current projects, his daughter's college plans, the usual comfortable topics. I paid the check and left by 8:30, heading back through Phoenix as morning traffic began building. The phone rang at 2 o'clock. "Hey, Dad, how are you?" Jennifer's voice had that forced cheerfulness people use when they're reading from a script. I set down the sandwich I'd been eating. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How are you?" "Good, good. I was just—" Brian and I were wondering, in the background, muffled but distinct. "Ask him when?" Jennifer's pause was barely a heartbeat. "Wondering about the timeline for what we discussed yesterday?" I closed my eyes. Brian was coaching her, using her as his messenger, his pressure tool, making her complicit. "Friday evening, like Brian and I agreed. Tell him that." "Okay. Thanks, Dad. I love you." "I love you too. Always." After she hung up, I stared at the phone for a long moment. Then I looked up Craig Adams's office address. The law firm occupied the 3rd floor of a downtown building, with windows overlooking Central Avenue. Craig met me in a conference room at 3 o'clock sharp. He'd always been punctual, which was why I'd chosen him for my estate planning 5 years ago. "Ronald, good to see you. What can I help with today?" I pulled out my leather notebook, the one I'd carried through hundreds of client meetings during my career. "If I loan money to a married couple, can I secure it against their home?" "Absolutely. Standard collateral agreement. Both spouses sign. Property becomes security." "What happens if they default?" Craig leaned back in his chair. You file a lien. Initiate foreclosure proceedings. Takes time, usually. I wrote carefully in block letters. Co-signer liability. Can the contract expedite that process? Now he was interested. Yes. Automatic foreclosure clause. Arizona revised statutes allow it if both parties agree in writing. No court battle needed. What conditions can be written in? For the next 40 minutes, Craig walked me through collateral structures, conditional repayment terms, lien placement procedures. I filled 6 pages with notes. Every question precise, every answer absorbed. When I left at 4 o'clock, I had everything I needed. That evening, I spread documents across my desk in 3 precise columns. Financial, my savings account statements showing $180,000 in retirement funds from decades of careful planning. Legal, notes from Craig's consultation, underlined phrases about automatic foreclosure and cosigner liability. Property, the parcel 447B listing. Kevin had shown me, plus public records I'd pulled for Brian and Jennifer's house, $280,000 current value, mortgage nearly paid off. I began drafting. Loan agreement, $100,000 at 8% annual interest, secured by borrower's primary residence. Repayment term 12 months. Default clause triggers automatic lien activation. Each word chosen carefully. Each clause designed to be perfectly legal, perfectly enforceable. This wasn't anger on paper, it was architecture. Load-bearing walls, support structures, foundation work. My phone buzzed at 9:15. Text from Jennifer. Thank you, Dad. Brian says you're doing the right thing. I love you. Brian says. Even her gratitude filtered through him. I typed back, I love you too. Always. Then I returned to the contract. Added clause 7. In event of default, lender retains right to seize collateral property without additional court proceedings, provided proper notice is given per Arizona revised statutes, per 33-811. I underlined without additional court proceedings. For 5 years I'd watched Brian manipulate my daughter, turn her against her own judgment, and now he thought he could manipulate me. Walk into my home, threaten my family, and I'd simply comply. But manipulation only works when the target doesn't see it coming. Brian thought he was playing me. He had no idea I'd been designing structures and solutions for 35 years. This was just another blueprint, and I always finished what I started. I spent Thursday and Friday morning finalizing everything, withdrew the funds, printed the contracts, and when Brian's car pulled into my driveway Friday evening, right on time, like a shark smelling blood, I was ready. The leather folder sat on my kitchen table. Inside, the printed loan agreement, a cashier's check for $100,000, property documents. I heard his engine cut off, car door slam, footsteps on the walkway. I didn't move to open the door, made him knock. When I finally opened it, Brian strode in expecting a simple transaction. His eyes went straight to the table. You have the money? I gestured to the kitchen. Sit down first. We need to discuss terms. His face darkened. Terms? You said 5 days. It's been 5 days. And I have what you need. But not as a gift, as a loan. A loan? Are you serious right now? I slid the contract across the table. $100,000 at 8% annual interest. 12 months to repay. Brian snatched up the pages, scanning. His jaw clenched. Secured by my house? You want my house as collateral? Your house and Jennifer's. It's joint property. This protects everyone. This is insulting. You don't trust me? I met his eyes. This isn't about trust. It's about responsibility. Sign it or find another solution by midnight. For 2 minutes, silence. Brian pulled out his phone, scrolled through messages, calculating, probably checking if his bookmakers would give him more time. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then he set the phone down hard. He picked up the pen. I need Jennifer here. She has to sign too. I called her. She arrived within 20 minutes. Brian had clearly told her to be ready. When she walked in, confusion clouded her face. Dad, what's going on? Brian called me over. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I'm helping with Brian's situation, but we need proper paperwork. Paperwork? Just a loan agreement, standard documentation. You'll need to sign as co-owner of the house. She glanced at Brian. He nodded slightly. She turned back to me, trusting. Okay, if you think it's necessary. I placed the pen in her hand. She barely glanced at the document before signing, looking at my face instead of the contract. That look, complete faith in her father, made my chest tighten. But I needed this protection in place. For her, even if she couldn't see it yet. I witnessed both signatures, added my own, handed Brian the cashier's check. He stood, holding it. Satisfied now? I'm satisfied that everything's legal and documented. 12 months. I'll have this paid back in 6. I hope you do. He turned toward the door. Come on, Jennifer. We're done here. They left without another word. The door clicked shut. I stood alone in my kitchen, the signed contract on the table. 3 weeks passed. Radio silence. Brian paid off his bookmakers, I assumed, since nobody came looking for him. Jennifer called twice in early March, voice light with relief. Thank you so much, Dad. The nightmare's over. I didn't correct her, just listened, made appropriate sounds, told her I loved her. During those weeks, I executed Phase 2. I contacted the title company handling Parcel 447B, used $45,000 from my remaining savings, money I'd kept separate from the loan funds. The closing took 12 days, standard procedure. By mid-March, the deed was registered in my name alone. 3.2 acres of desert scrub on the wrong side of Highway 60. To anyone else, worthless. To me, opportunity. Simultaneously, I reached out to Marcus Webb. We met at a coffee shop on the north side, neutral territory, nowhere Brian would recognize. Marcus arrived early, already nursing black coffee when I walked in. 67 years old, retired Phoenix PD detective. Sharp eyes that still scanned rooms by habit. Ronald, been a while. What's this about? I need to document someone's activities. Gambling related. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Understanding. For legal proceedings? Potentially, I need facts, not assumptions. Public records first, then observation if necessary. Nothing illegal. Exactly, just the truth. Marcus taught me how to access court filings, check for previous gambling-related incidents, monitor social media patterns. He also agreed to conduct discreet surveillance when opportunities arose. Not entrapment, documentation. By late March, I had a system. Black notebook, block capital entries, dates underlined twice, each observation logged with precision. March 28th entry. Brian observed entering location on Mill Avenue, Tempe, 9:47 p.m. Exited 1:23 a.m. Pattern consistent with previous reports. I closed the notebook, placed it in my safe alongside the loan documents. 1 month after the signing, I sat in my office reviewing 3 files. The signed loan agreement with 11 months remaining, the deed to Parcel 447B, already appreciating as rezoning news circulated, estimated current value $65,000, and Marcus's preliminary report confirming Brian had returned to poker games. I didn't feel victorious, just patient. I opened my calendar, counted forward 12 months to late February 2026, circled the date, set a reminder, but I knew things would likely accelerate before then. Brian thought he'd gotten what he wanted, $100,000, a father-in-law who'd folded under pressure. But architects don't fold. We build, layer by layer, and I was just laying the foundation. April arrived with unexpected heat, both weather and tension. For 3 weeks after signing the loan, Brian had been quiet. Too quiet. I should have known he was planning something. The phone call from Jennifer confirmed it. I was in my garden that morning, kneeling beside barrel cactus, pruning shears in hand. Desert plants require specific care. Remove dead growth, encourage new. My phone buzzed against my hip. Dad, I need to talk to you, now. Her voice carried an edge I hadn't heard before. Strained, accusatory. What's wrong? Not over the phone. Come to our house. 15 minutes later, I pulled into their driveway. Brian's car was there. He'd orchestrated this. Jennifer opened the door, arms crossed, no greeting. We moved to the living room. Brian stood against the far wall, arms folded, dominant posture. He wanted me to know this was his territory. Jennifer sat on the couch. I took the chair opposite her, deliberately angling away from Brian. If this was about choosing sides, I'd make my priority clear. Brian told me something about the contract you made us sign. What about it? He says you're trying to take our house, that the whole loan was a trap. Brian pushed off the wall. Don't sugarcoat it, Jen. Tell him what you found out. She wouldn't meet my eyes. You bought land right after loaning us money. Brian says you planned this, that you never intended to just help. I looked only at Jennifer. I'm protecting your future. That contract ensures the loan is repaid. Repaid? At 8% interest with our house as collateral. Brian's voice cut across the room. That's not protection, that's extortion. I turned to him now. You asked for $100,000. I provided it, with reasonable terms. The land purchase is my personal investment, completely separate. Separate? You expect us to believe that? I expect you to honor your agreement, unless you don't plan to repay the loan. The room went cold. Jennifer looked between us, something cracking in her expression. Doubt. First time I'd seen her question me in years. The visit ended with stiff goodbyes. Jennifer didn't hug me, just stood in the doorway, arms still crossed, while I walked to my car. 2 days later, the courier arrived. Legal documents, official letterhead, Brian Turner versus Ronald Parker, civil lawsuit for emotional distress and financial coercion. The complaint alleged I'd exploited a family crisis to manipulate my daughter and son-in-law into signing an unconscionable contract under duress. Sought remedy, void the loan agreement. Court date, early May. 3 weeks away, I read it twice, then spread the pages across my kitchen table, yellow highlighter in hand. Marked key phrases. Unconscionable. Duress? Coercion? Brian was smarter than I'd estimated, or had consulted someone who was. That night, I lay in bed, eyes open. Clock read 2:17 a.m., then 3:44 a.m., then 4:56 a.m. For the first time since this started, doubt crept in. If the loan was voided, I'd lose leverage. Be out $100,000. And Jennifer, she'd stopped calling. Brian's influence spreading like poison. I needed verification. Amanda Sims came recommended by Craig Adams, notary public, paralegal specialist, document verification expert. Her office occupied a small suite in Scottsdale, professional but unpretentious. She reviewed the loan contract for 30 minutes straight, making notes, cross-referencing Arizona statutes. Finally looked up. This is solid. Every clause is enforceable. But he's claiming coercion. Can he prove you threatened them? Withheld information? Misrepresented the terms? No. Brian signed because his bookmakers were threatening him. Jennifer signed because she trusts me. Amanda paused. That's his angle then. Your daughter's trust. He'll claim you exploited it. The words hit harder than expected. How do I counter that? Prove he's the manipulator, not you. Show he's still gambling, still irresponsible. Make the court see who really deserves protection here. I mentioned Marcus's documentation. Amanda's eyes sharpened. If you can show Brian's continued gambling after receiving the loan, it proves he's financially irresponsible, not coerced. That strengthens your position considerably. She also recommended I document my own motivations. Write down exactly why you structured the loan this way. Focus on protecting Jennifer. Make it clear your intentions were paternal, not predatory. I left her office with an action plan. That evening, I called Marcus. I need everything you've documented on Brian. Comprehensive report. Some might not be courtroom admissible, but it'll give you leverage. Leverage is exactly what I need. Ronald, are you sure you want to go this route? Once this information comes out, there's no going back with your daughter. Long pause. Outside my window, the desert sunset painted everything orange and purple. If I don't fight this, Brian wins, and Jennifer loses everything. I'll take the hit if it means she's protected. That night I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad, wrote in longhand first, crossing out phrases, rewriting sections. Why I structured the loan with collateral. Statement for legal record. My daughter Jennifer married Brian Turner 5 years ago against my counsel. Over those years I observed financial instability, secrecy, and control. When he approached me demanding $100,000, I faced a choice. Enable his behavior with a gift, or create accountability through structure. I chose structure, not to take their home, but to ensure my daughter wouldn't lose everything if Brian failed to change. I expected repayment. I hoped for his success. But I prepared for his failure. That is not manipulation. That is protection. I typed it formally on my computer, printed 3 copies, filed one in my safe. Brian wanted to paint me as a villain, but I'd spent 35 years building things that lasted. Foundations don't crack under pressure. They hold, and I was about to show him exactly how strong mine was. The weeks between mid-April and early May felt like standing in desert sun, slow, burning, testing endurance. But the court date arrived regardless. I stood before my bathroom mirror that morning, adjusting a tie I hadn't worn in 2 years. Dark suit, pressed shirt, the uniform of professional presentation. My reflection showed a man preparing for battle, not retirement. The Maricopa County Courthouse hallway was all beige walls and fluorescent lighting. I sat on a wooden bench, leather briefcase beside me, reviewing my written statement one final time. Across the hall, Brian stood with Jennifer and their attorney, a younger man in an expensive suit, probably costing what I'd paid for my first car. Jennifer glanced at me once, then away. The distance between us wasn't just physical. A woman sat down beside me, well-dressed, composed, holding her own legal folder. After a moment of shared silence, she spoke. "First time dealing with family matters in court?" I looked at her, assessed quickly. Honest face, tired eyes that had seen their own battles. "My son-in-law is suing me. Claims I coerced him into a loan agreement." She nodded, knowing smile touching her lips. "Let me guess. He needed money desperately. Signed willingly, now regrets the terms?" "Exactly that. My son forged my signature on property documents. Family betrayal has a predictable pattern." She extended her hand. "Patricia Morrison. Ronald Parker." A court clerk appeared, announced a 30-minute delay. Scheduling conflict. Patricia and I remained on the bench, and somehow the conversation continued. "What was his crisis?" she asked. "The one that made him need money?" "Gambling debts, underground poker, about $87,000. Patricia leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. "Did he report any gambling winnings to the IRS?" "I doubt it." "Then you have leverage. Tax fraud destroys credibility. Courts won't sympathize with someone actively defrauding the government." My mind sharpened. Marcus's surveillance documented Brian's gambling, but I hadn't considered the tax angle. Patricia pulled a business card from her wallet, wrote her personal number on the back. "I ran an accounting firm for 30 years. If you need help after this hearing, call me." My case was called. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, presided it from the bench. Brian's attorney argued emotional coercion, exploitation of trust. I delivered my counter calmly, reading from my prepared statement. I provided financial assistance with standard lending terms to protect my daughter's assets. The borrower signed willingly to resolve his gambling debts. I presented Marcus's report. Dates, locations, photographs. Brian returning to gambling within weeks of receiving the loan. The judge reviewed the contract thoroughly, listened to both sides, finally spoke. "The contract appears legally sound. I find insufficient evidence of coercion or misrepresentation. Motion to void, dismissed." But she added, looking directly at me. "However, I caution against excessive control of family finances. Proceed carefully." Brian's face reddened. Jennifer looked confused, not relieved. I found Patricia in the courthouse cafe. Afterward, small space with vending machines and plastic tables. She'd already secured a corner table, coffee steaming in front of her. "How did it go?" I allowed myself a small smile. "Case dismissed." She raised her cup. We talked for an hour, not just about legal matters. Patricia shared her story. Widowed 10 years ago, built her accounting business from nothing, recently discovered her son's betrayal attempt. I talked about Jennifer's mother, who died 12 years ago, about my architecture career, about disappointment. There was an ease between us, recognition of shared understanding. "I can analyze financial records," Patricia offered, "trace gambling expenditures, build patterns. If you're serious about protecting your daughter long-term, you need more than surveillance photos." That evening I sat in my home office, Patricia's business card on my desk. I realized my plan had evolved, not just recovering the loan, but creating conditions where Brian self-destructed through his own recklessness. I picked up my phone, texted, "Dinner tomorrow, I'd like to discuss your offer." Her response came within minutes. 7 p.m., I know a place. I looked at the parcel 447B deed on my wall, recently framed, property already appreciating as development news circulated. For weeks, I'd been building a structure with one blueprint, but Patricia had shown me a different design, one where Brian didn't just lose to me, He lost to himself, and that was far more permanent. The next evening, I met Patricia at a restaurant she'd chosen, quiet enough for serious conversation, comfortable enough to not feel like a business meeting. I didn't realize then that this dinner would mark a turning point, not just in my strategy against Brian, but in my life. I arrived exactly at 7. Architect's punctuality. Patricia was already seated at a corner table. Laptop open, papers spread. She slid a document across the white tablecloth as I sat. I pulled public records, cross-referenced credit reports I can legally access, analyzed patterns. Her finger tapped a highlighted figure. Your son-in-law has accumulated new debts since the loan, approximately $34,000, across 3 high-interest credit cards and what appears to be another private lender. I studied the numbers. Not surprised. Confirmed. He's still gambling. Compulsively, Patricia said, and hiding it poorly. We ordered salmon for her, steak for me, and continued analyzing over dinner. Patricia pulled her laptop closer, typed rapidly. He's making minimum payments on your loan, but the new debt is mounting. At this rate, he'll default within 6 months. Not from inability to pay, but from cash flow collapse. What if I offered him restructuring? Her eyes sharpened. Restructure how? Lower monthly payments, ease immediate pressure, but extend the term from 12 to 18 months and increase interest from 8 to 12%, Patricia calculated, rotating the screen toward me. That raises total debt from $100,000 to approximately $135,000. He'd be in deeper, but feel like you're helping him. Exactly. The following week, I contacted Craig Adams to draft restructuring documents. He warned about the judge's caution. I countered that I was offering relief, Brian's choice to accept or decline. I didn't call Brian directly. Sent the offer through formal letter. He called within 2 days. You're serious about this? It reduces your monthly burden from $800 to $550. Gives you breathing room. What's the catch? 18 months instead of 12. Interest increases to 12%. But if you can't manage current payments, this helps. Pause. I can manage $550. Then we have an agreement. Mid-June brought unexpected news. The Phoenix Planning Department confirmed. Parcel 447B officially included in the commercial development zone. I hired an appraiser for current valuation. The estimate, $180,000, 4 times my purchase price in 3 months. I called Kevin Foster. You were right about the rezoning timeline. I heard the shopping complex broke ground last week. Your land will be prime retail access. You could sell today for $180? Easy. I didn't plan to sell, but I recognized leverage. I invited Brian to lunch at a diner, neutral territory, my choice of setting. Discussed the restructuring terms casually, then mentioned, almost as an afterthought, I invested in some land east of the city in March. It's appreciated significantly due to development plans. Brian's interest visibly perked. Gamblers are drawn to winning opportunities. How much appreciation? Bought at 45. Current appraisal is 180. That's significant. Commercial development. I'm considering selling a 40% stake, $80,000 for someone who can move quickly. Why offer it to me? Family. Despite our differences, I believe in giving opportunities. The hook was set. Over the next 2 weeks, Brian secured a high-interest personal loan, $80,000 at 15% from a predatory lender. Signed promissory note for the land stake, payable in 12 months. What he didn't realize, I controlled the sale timing. Written into the agreement. Brian now owed restructured loan $135,000, investment debt $80,000, existing credit cards $34,000, total obligations $249,000. His annual income as mid-level real estate manager $75,000. The math didn't work, and I knew it. Throughout that month, Patricia and I met weekly, sometimes strategy sessions, sometimes simple dinners or walks. We visited an art gallery downtown, small local space, abstract desert landscapes, stood close at a painting of desert dawn, shoulders nearly touching. I haven't felt this engaged in years, Patricia admitted. My work was always numbers, but this is using them for justice. I couldn't do this without your insight. Silence. Then, is that the only reason you keep calling? I paused. Honest. No, it's not. We didn't kiss or make declarations. Just acknowledge something growing. Late June evening, we sat on my back patio. Desert sunset painted everything orange and purple. Patricia reviewed her laptop. Brian's financial profile now shows he's overleveraged by a factor of 3. Any disruption, job loss, market shift, unexpected expense, and the entire structure collapses. And when it does, she looked at me steadily. You'll own his house. His stake in the land reverts to you, and Jennifer will see exactly who she married. I nodded slowly. I'd built careers on understanding load-bearing capacity. Every structure has a breaking point. I'd just ensured Brian reached his, not through my force, but through his own greed. Architects don't destroy buildings. We simply stop reinforcing them. July brought Phoenix's brutal heat. Temperatures over 110, air shimmering above asphalt. But the real pressure was building inside Jennifer's marriage. I knew it would crack eventually. I just didn't expect her to be the one to break it open. She arrived mid-morning without calling first. I opened the door to find her holding a manila folder, face puffy from crying, but expression different than before. Not confused, resolute. I need to show you something. I should have looked sooner. We moved to the kitchen table. She spread documents across the surface with trembling hands. Bank statements showing cash advances, credit card bills with gambling charges, printed text messages using coded language about the game, and settlements. I found these in his office, hidden in a locked drawer. She pointed to each paper. There's more debt. New debt. $34,000 in credit cards I didn't know existed. And these messages. He's still gambling. After everything. After your loan. After promising me. I sat quietly. Let her process. She finally looked up. You were right. From the beginning. And I didn't want to believe it. I'm so sorry, Dad. I reached across the table, placed my hand over hers. Jennifer, look at me. You have nothing to apologize for. I chose him over you. I doubted you. You loved someone. That's not weakness. That's what you're supposed to do when you marry someone. But you knew? I suspected. There's a difference. And even if I knew for certain, you needed to see it yourself. Otherwise, you'd always wonder if I manipulated you. The front door opened. Patricia entered carrying a grocery bag. She had a key now. Another detail Jennifer noticed immediately. Patricia set the bag on the counter, read the room, sat at the table, but didn't speak right away. Jennifer glanced between us. How long have you two been? A few months, Patricia said honestly. Since May. We met at the courthouse. Jennifer processed this. Her father had moved on, built a life she wasn't part of. But instead of resentment, something else crossed her face. Relief? Maybe. He wasn't alone. Patricia leaned forward slightly. 20 years ago, my husband did something similar. Made me doubt reality. When I finally left, I thought I'd never trust anyone again. But you do. Eventually. When you find someone honest. Jennifer nodded slowly, then straightened her shoulders. I'm filing for divorce. I asked carefully. Are you certain? I've been certain for weeks. I just didn't want to admit it. We discussed logistics. Attorneys I could recommend. Financial advisors. Where she'd stay temporarily. I didn't do it for her. Just gave her the tools. She left around 2 o'clock to start packing. Brian arrived at 7 that evening. Must have tracked her car, realized where she'd gone. He was disheveled, aggressive. You turned my wife against me. He stood on my front step. You've been planning this all along. I didn't invite him inside, just stood in the doorway. I have evidence, he continued. Personal letters between you and that woman. Started before my lawsuit, even. I'll show everyone what kind of man you really are. There are no letters, Brian. No secret correspondence. We've done nothing wrong. I'll destroy your reputation. Do what you need to do. The truth is on my side. Patricia appeared behind me, stood beside me. United front. Brian stared at us both, realizing he was facing something he couldn't manipulate or intimidate. He left without another word, but his parting shot drifted back. This isn't over. After his car disappeared, Patricia took my hand on the front porch. First overt physical affection we'd shown. He'll keep trying to poison people against us. Let him try. Anyone who matters knows the truth. She studied my face. Are we really doing this? At our age? Starting something new? I think we've been doing this for weeks. We just didn't say it out loud. Then I'm saying it now. I care about you. More than I expected to. I squeezed her hand. I care about you too, and I'm done pretending that's complicated. We went back inside together. Later that night, I sat in my office, but I wasn't reviewing documents or plotting moves, just thinking. For months, I'd been so focused on protecting Jennifer from Brian that I'd forgotten what came after. But Patricia reminded me, protection isn't the end goal. Freedom is, and Jennifer had just claimed hers. Now Brian faced a new reality, not just me as an adversary, but Jennifer as someone he could no longer control. That changed everything. August arrived with Jennifer moved into a new apartment, divorce papers filed, and Brian facing two realities. He'd lost his wife, and his payment deadline had arrived. I'd spent 3 weeks letting him stew in uncertainty. Now the bill came due. Literally. August 5th, 9 o'clock morning. Patricia sat at my breakfast nook with coffee while I checked my computer screen. Bank account balance unchanged. No incoming wire transfer. The phone rang. Craig Adams. Ronald, have you received the $80,000 from Turner? Nothing. Then we activate the penalty clause. Failure to pay triggers a $15,000 late fee, plus daily accrual at 5%. Do I have authorization to proceed? I glanced at Patricia. She nodded slightly. Proceed. Patricia pulled her laptop over, opened her spreadsheet. Let me update the full accounting, she typed quickly. Investment loan, $80,000, plus late fee, $15,000 equals $95,000. Restructured loan now at $118,000. 10 months into the 18-month term, interest accrued. Total owed to me, $213,000. That afternoon, 3 missed calls from Brian. Then a text. Need to talk, please. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Brian looked terrible. Weight loss, unshaven, dark circles. He slid paperwork across the table with shaking hands. I sold my car. $18,000. It barely covers 1 month. He hunched forward. I can't make the payment. You know I can't. Can we negotiate an extension? I studied him. You've had 12 months since the original loan, 6 months since restructuring, 3 months since the investment agreement. What would 3 more months change? His honesty surprised me. I thought I could win it back. The gambling. I thought one good streak and I'd be clear. That's the problem, Brian. You always think the next hand will fix everything. What do you want from me? You've already won. You destroyed my marriage. You're taking everything. I leaned back. I wanted you to change. To choose my daughter over your addiction. You never did. So yes, I'll take the house. I'll take the investment stake. And I'll consider us settled. But that's not winning. That's just consequences. Mid-August, Craig filed official legal demand for debt collection. The process moved quickly. Those automatic foreclosure clauses from the original contract did their work. Brian had 30 days to respond or vacate. He didn't contest. Knew it was futile. Meanwhile, I structured Jennifer's protection. Arizona community property law entitled her to half the house value, $140,000. I arranged to transfer that amount to her as a gift once foreclosure completed. She hadn't created this situation. She shouldn't suffer for it. The same week, I received an offer on parcel 447B. The shopping complex developer wanted the land for parking expansion. $285,000. I accepted immediately. I'd bought it for $45,000 in March. Brian's 40% stake reverted to me when he defaulted on the investment loan. Net profit, $240,000. Brian learned about the sale later through real estate connections. Called me, voice hollow. You planned all of this. The loan, the restructuring, the land deal. You wanted me to fail. I didn't deny it. I gave you every opportunity to succeed. Lower payments, investment opportunities, time extensions. But you chose gambling over responsibility. Every single time. I didn't make you fail, Brian. You did that yourself. I just stopped enabling it. Silence. Then, did you ever believe I could change? I paused, honest. For Jennifer's sake, I hoped. But no, I didn't believe it, and I was right not to. Late August evening, Patricia and I sat at my kitchen table with a modest bottle of wine. She had her spreadsheet open one final time. Total debt Brian owed, $213,000. Total you recovered, she calculated. House value minus Jennifer's gift, $140,000. Investment stake reversion, $80,000. Land sale profit, $240,000. Total, $460,000. She looked up. You could have simply foreclosed in March, taken the house after the first default window. Then Brian wouldn't have learned anything, and Jennifer might have blamed me forever. Patricia closed the laptop. Now Jennifer's free, financially stable, and knows exactly who Brian is. That was the real goal, wasn't it? I nodded. We clinked glasses quietly. Not triumphant celebration, just acknowledgement. I'd spent 35 years building structures that would outlast storms and earthquakes. This was no different. I built a trap so perfect that Brian's own weight collapsed it. Not my force. His. September moved into its final week with Jennifer settling into her apartment. Brian apparently leaving Phoenix, rumors through Kevin's real estate connections, and one last piece of business, selling the house that had started everything. Not for revenge, for closure. Early September morning, Maricopa County Courthouse. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Craig Adams. Brian sat alone across the aisle. His attorney had withdrawn when the fees stopped coming. The judge reviewed the file. Loan documents, payment records, default notices, penalty assessments. She looked up at Brian. Mr. Turner, do you contest the foreclosure? Brian's voice barely carried. No, Your Honor. The record shows you signed a loan agreement willingly, secured by your marital property, and failed to make scheduled payments. The property at 2847 Desert Bloom Drive is hereby transferred to Ronald Parker, in full satisfaction of outstanding debt. The gavel fell, one sharp crack. Brian stood, walked out quickly, never looked my direction. Outside on the courthouse steps, September sun bright and hot, Jennifer waited. She wore nurse's scrubs under a cardigan, heading to work after. She hadn't wanted to be inside for the hearing. Too painful. But she wanted to be there when it ended. Is it done? I nodded. 5 years. That house was supposed to be our future, and now it's just gone. That house was built on lies. Now you get to build something real. I handed her an envelope. The check inside. $140,000. Her half under Arizona community property law. She stared at it. This is too much. This is what you're entitled to. It's yours. Tears formed but didn't fall. Thank you. For not saying, I told you so. For just being my dad. Mid-September, I helped Jennifer move into her Tempe apartment. 2 bedrooms, bright windows, affordable on her nursing salary. Patricia came too. The 3 of us carried boxes upstairs, assembled furniture, hung curtains. Jennifer mentioned she'd started therapy, processing the manipulation, rebuilding self-trust. She'd also enrolled in ICU certification courses. I didn't hover, just supported. Before we left, Jennifer hugged us both. I'm glad you found each other. You deserve happiness too. Permission and acknowledgement. Her father had moved on, and that was okay. That weekend, I hosted a small dinner at my house. Kevin Foster, Marcus Webb, Craig Adams, Amanda Sims, Jennifer. Not lavish. Grilled chicken, salad, Patricia's homemade dessert. But the first time I'd entertained since retirement. I raised my water glass. I want to introduce someone officially. This is Patricia Morrison, my partner. No awkwardness, no lengthy explanations. People who mattered accepted it immediately. We discussed fall plans. Patricia and I were taking a week to Grand Canyon in October. Neither of us had been in years. Jennifer offered hiking trail recommendations. Normal conversation about future, not past. 2 days later, my phone rang at 8 p.m. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Brian's voice came through rough, slightly slurred. You destroyed everything. My marriage, my home, my career. People in real estate won't touch me now. You planned this from day one. I listened without interrupting. You used Jennifer as bait. Used the money as leverage. You manipulated everything. Finally, I spoke. I gave you a loan with clear terms. You signed. You failed to repay. Those are facts, not manipulation. You wanted me to fail. I expected you to fail based on your history. But I gave you every chance to prove me wrong. You chose gambling over responsibility every single time. This isn't over. Yes, Brian, it is. Move on. I have. I hung up. Patricia sat beside me on the couch. Will he keep trying? Probably, but there's nothing left to fight over. That night, we sat on the back patio. Cooler September evening, stars visible, planning the Grand Canyon trip. Hotel reservations, hiking trails, photography spots. When's the last time you took a real vacation? Before Jennifer was born, 34 years ago. Then we're overdue. Comfortable silence. Then, do you think about what comes next? After this trip? I think about it constantly. What do you see? A life that isn't defined by fixing problems. Just living. Patricia squeezed my hand. For months, every action had been strategic. Build the trap, execute the plan, protect Jennifer. But sitting there with Patricia, I realized the revenge had never been the goal. The goal was this: freedom to imagine a future without Brian's shadow. And we'd finally earned it. Late September morning, I stood in the empty house at 2847 Desert Bloom Drive with a real estate agent. Our footsteps echoed on hardwood floors. No furniture, no life. Kitchen where the loan was signed. Living room where Brian made threats. All hollow now. Market conditions are favorable. Similar properties sold for $275,000 to $285,000, she typed on her tablet. I recommend listing at $280,000. Should sell within 3 weeks. I signed the listing agreement on the same kitchen counter where Brian and I had signed documents months ago. Full circle. The agent left. I stood alone for a moment. No satisfaction, no grief, just acknowledgement. This chapter was closing. 3 weeks later, mid-October, the house sold for $280,000 cash to a young couple. First-time buyers, ironically. I structured the proceeds carefully. Jennifer already had $140,000 from the foreclosure settlement. From this sale, I allocated an additional $40,000 to her. Total, $180,000. Enough for a house down payment in a year or two. Emergency fund, career investment. For myself, $100,000 covered my original loan. The remaining $140,000, combined with the land sale profit, meant security. Not wealth, but stability. More importantly, Jennifer was financially independent. Late October, Patricia and I visited Jennifer's apartment. She'd decorated plants, artwork, photos. Noticeably none of Brian. I passed. She showed us her certification. ICU certification. Hospital's moving me to critical care with a 22% salary increase. That's wonderful, Patricia said. And I'm dating someone, just casually. A respiratory therapist from work. Jennifer smiled. I'm learning to trust my own judgment again. That's better than happy. That's solid. She handed us a framed photograph, the three of us from moving day, laughing while assembling furniture. On the back, she'd written, "My real family." Patricia and Jennifer had developed their own relationship. Coffee every week, separate from me. I was glad for it. Through Kevin's real estate connections, I learned Brian had moved to Tucson, trying to start over, but his reputation followed. Gambling history, foreclosure, financial irresponsibility. Last Kevin heard, he was working as a rental property manager, much lower status than before. I felt no triumph hearing this, just recognition that consequences are permanent. I didn't share it with Jennifer. She didn't ask. Brian had become irrelevant to our lives. Early November, Patricia officially moved into my house, not as a guest, as a co-owner. We'd refinanced in both names, redecorated together, her touches, new cream curtains, rearranged furniture, our joint photograph on the mantel. It wasn't Ronald's house anymore. It was our house. We took the Grand Canyon trip, 1 week in late October. Hiking, stargazing, long conversations about nothing important. Patricia joked, 64 years old, and I'm finally on a honeymoon. Better late than never. We weren't married, neither felt the need for formality, but we were committed. Building a life together. Mid-November evening, we sat on our back patio wrapped in blankets, drinking coffee. The season had changed. Cooler air, earlier sunset. Discussing next year, maybe sell the house, buy something smaller, travel more. Patricia wanted to visit Sedona. I suggested taking Jennifer along. Normal plans, future-focused. Do you ever think about Brian? About everything that happened? I considered. Sometimes, but not with anger. More like looking back at a completed project. What did you build? Protection for Jennifer, a structure that couldn't be manipulated. Long pause. But mostly, I built space for this. For us. For a life that isn't about fighting. The sun set over the Arizona desert. Orange and purple sky. Silhouette of saguaros. Vast empty landscape symbolizing possibility. You know, I spent 60 years building structures for other people. Designing their homes, their businesses, their dreams. I was good at it. But I forgot to build something for myself. Patricia squeezed my hand. It's time now to build my own life. Our life. What does that look like? I smiled, genuine, relaxed. I don't know yet. That's the best part. We sat in comfortable silence. Justice wasn't about destroying Brian. It was about freeing Jennifer, freeing myself, and discovering that even at 62, it's not too late to start building something new. Something that lasts, not because it's reinforced against threats, but because it's built on truth. Patricia taught me that. Jennifer showed me it was possible. And I finally learned to stop being the architect of everyone else's happiness and start constructing my own. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.